In 2020, construction workers in central Berlin broke through a concrete wall that had been sealed since 1945. Behind it was a room that the Soviet army had locked, cataloged, and ordered never opened. For 75 years, the room sat beneath one of the most excavated cities on Earth. Historians walked over it, builders worked around it. Three governments, Nazi, Soviet, and reunified German, knew it was there. None of them opened it. What was found inside that room contradicts the official account of the final days of the Third Reich at three critical points. And the documents recovered from within it had been listed as destroyed in Soviet archives since 1946. They were not destroyed, they were buried. This is what they contained. Before we continue, like something different this week, I want to try something with this community. Drop your birthday in the comments, just the date, month, and day. Every month, I'm going to pick one birthday from the comments, and for that person, I'm going to research what happened, what really happened on the closest date to the day they were born, not the headlines, not the textbook version, the sealed file, the classified report, the part of the story that never made it into the official record, a full video, research from primary sources built around the date you were born, one birthday, one story, one video that exists because you were here. Drop your date below. Now, back to what was inside Cabinet 11. March 14th, 2020, 0937 in the morning, Vossstrasse, Berlin, Mitte, Federal Republic of Germany. Construction site B-4471, Phase 2 residential development. Jürgen Hartmann stands in a trench 4.2 meters below modern street level, staring at a wall that should not exist. Hartmann is a site foreman for Bürger Baugruppe, a mid-sized Berlin construction firm specializing in residential foundation work. He has supervised excavations across Berlin for 23 years. In that time, he has encountered unexploded ordnance 14 times, human remains twice, and remnants of Nazi-era and Cold War-era structures more times than he can count. Berlin's subsurface is an archaeological layer cake. The top meter is modern fill, post-war rubble compressed under 6 decades of reconstruction. Below that, the rubble itself, approximately 75 million cubic meters of it, the shattered remains of a city that was 80% destroyed by Allied bombing in the Soviet final offensive. Below the rubble, the original structures, basements, bunker systems, utility tunnels, and the foundations of buildings that existed before the war. Hartmann knows this stratigraphy as well as any archaeologist. He can identify a 1943 bombing layer by the color of the ash. He can distinguish Soviet demolition rubble from Allied bombing, rubble by the size of the concrete fragments. What he is looking at now does not fit any layer he recognizes. The wall is poured concrete, approximately 40 centimeters thick. It is embedded in a layer of rubble consistent with the April-May 1945 Soviet assault on central Berlin. But the wall is not part of any known structure. It does not appear on any wartime architectural plan for this section of Vossstrasse. It does not connect to any adjacent basement or bunker foundation. It is a standalone wall, freestanding, sealing something behind it. Hartmann radios his project manager. Construction stops. The Landesdenkmalamt, Berlin's state office for the preservation of historical monuments, is notified within the hour. By noon, archaeologists are on site. By 3 p.m., they have confirmed what Hartmann suspected. The wall seals the entrance to a room that does not appear on any known plan of the Vossstrasse government quarter. The administrative heart of the Third Reich, where Hitler's chancellery, Goebbels' propaganda ministry, and dozens of other Nazi government buildings once stood. A room that has been sealed since 1945. A room that someone went to considerable effort to ensure would not be found. The archaeologists request permission to breach the wall. Permission requires authorization from the Landesdenkmalamt, the Federal Office for Central Services and Unresolved Property Issues, and because the site falls within the former Soviet occupation zone, notification of the Russian Federation's diplomatic mission in Berlin. The authorization process takes 4 months. On July 22nd, 2020, the wall is opened. What is behind it will rewrite 3 chapters of the accepted history of the Third Reich's final days. and raise questions about a fourth that no historian has been able to answer. Section 1. Why Vossstrasse? Matters to understand what was found behind that wall, you need to understand what stood above it. Vossstrasse was the most important street in Nazi Germany. Number 6. Vossstrasse housed the Neue Reichskanzlei, the New Reich Chancellery, designed by Albert Speer and completed in January 1939. The building was 421 meters long. Its main gallery, the Marble Gallery, stretched 146 meters, intentionally designed to be twice the length of the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. Hitler wanted foreign diplomats to walk the full length before reaching his office. The walk was the message. Beneath the Chancellery, a network of bunkers extended underground. The most famous of these, the Führer bunker, sat beneath the Chancellery garden, approximately 8.5 meters below ground level, protected by 3 meters of reinforced concrete overhead and 4 meters of earth above that. Hitler spent the final months of his life in the Führer bunker. He died there on April 30th, 1945. But the Führer bunker was not the only underground structure on Vossstrasse. The entire government quarter was connected by a subterranean network of tunnels, utility passages, cable conduits, and emergency shelters. Some of these were purpose-built military installations, others were adapted from the basements of pre-war buildings. Still others were hastily constructed in the final months of the war as Allied bombing intensified. After the war, the Soviets systematically demolished the above-ground structures of the government quarter. The Chancellery was stripped of its marble and the building was dynamited. By 1949, Vossstrasse was a wasteland of rubble, but the underground structures remained. The Soviets explored and catalogued the major bunker systems, the Führer bunker, the Vorbunker, the bunker beneath the propaganda ministry. Their engineers surveyed, mapped, and in many cases deliberately destroyed these facilities. The Führer bunker was partially blown up in 1947, and the remaining sections were buried under rubble and fill. The Soviets were thorough. But thoroughness is not the same as completeness. Vossstrasse runs approximately 600 meters through the former government quarter. Along its length, dozens of buildings once stood, each with its own basement, each potentially connected to the underground network. Not every basement was found, not every connection was mapped, not every room was cataloged. The room that Jürgen Hartmann found in March 2020 was one that the Soviets had found, but had chosen not to destroy. They had chosen to seal it. That distinction matters enormously. The Soviets destroyed structures they considered militarily or politically dangerous. They sealed structures they wanted preserved but inaccessible. They sealed this room because they wanted its contents to survive, but they did not want anyone to access those contents? Not yet. Perhaps not ever. The question is, why? The answer was behind the wall. July 22nd, 2020. The archaeological team assembled at the construction site consists of 4 specialists from the Landesdenkmalamt, 2 historians from the German Historical Museum, a structural engineer, and a forensic documentation team. The breach procedure follows established protocol for opening sealed wartime structures in Berlin. The risk assessment identifies 3 primary hazards: unexploded ordnance, toxic atmosphere from 75 years of sealed decomposition, and structural instability. Air monitoring equipment is positioned at the wall. A small hole is drilled through the concrete to sample the atmosphere behind it. The results show elevated CO2 and reduced oxygen, and so it's consistent with a sealed space, but no toxic gases and no explosive vapors. At 114 hours, the team begins cutting through the concrete wall using a diamond-tipped circular saw. The wall is thicker than expected. What appeared to be 40 centimeters of concrete from the exterior face proves to be 40 centimeters of concrete, followed by 15 centimeters of airspace, followed by a second wall of 30 centimeters of concrete. A double wall, 2 independent concrete barriers with an air gap between them. This construction technique is not standard for wartime Berlin bunkers. Standard bunker walls were single-pour reinforced concrete. Double walls with air gaps were used in exactly one application in World War II, German construction: the protection of materials sensitive to moisture and temperature fluctuation. Archives, document storage, evidence preservation. Whoever built this double wall was not trying to protect against bombs. They were trying to protect against time. At 10:43 hours, the inner wall is breached. A fiber optic camera is inserted through the opening. The feed shows a room, approximately 4 meters by 6 meters. Ceiling height approximately 2.2 meters. The room is dry. The air is stale, but breathable. The floor is poured concrete. The walls are painted, pale gray, institutional. The room is not empty. Against the far wall, stacked from floor to nearly the ceiling, are metal filing cabinets. Standard Reichskanzlei issue steel cabinets, gray-green paint, each approximately 1.5 meters tall with 4 drawers. The camera operator counts 8 cabinets visible from the insertion point. On the floor near the cabinets, a wooden crate. Military issue, approximately 60 centimeters by 40 centimeters, stenciled with markings too faded for the camera to read at this distance. On a small wooden table near the entrance wall, the wall they have just breached, a single item sits in the center of the surface, a Soviet military cap, an officer's cap, placed deliberately on the table as if someone set it down and walked away. The archaeologists expand the breach, opening to allow physical entry. At 11:12 hours, Dr. Katharina Weller, lead archaeologist from the Landesdenkmalamt, becomes the first person to enter the room in 75 years. Her first words, recorded by the documentation team's audio equipment: "The air's cold, much colder than it should be at this depth in July. And there are documents everywhere, not just in the cabinets. There are loose papers on the floor near the crate. They look intact." She pauses. This room was not abandoned in haste. It was organized. Someone catalogued what was in here. There are labels on the cabinet drawers. I can read them. They are in Russian. Russian labels on German filing cabinets in a room beneath the Nazi government quarter, sealed with Soviet-style poured concrete since 1945. The Soviets had found this room, they had opened it, they had examined its contents, they had relabeled the drawers in Russian. And then they had sealed it again with a double concrete wall designed to last centuries. Whatever was in those cabinets, the Soviets wanted it preserved. But they did not want it found. Not by the Germans, not by the Americans, not by the British, not by anyone. The room contained 12 filing cabinets, not 8 as initially visible on camera. 4 additional cabinets were positioned along the side walls, partially obscured by the angle of the fiber optic camera. Each cabinet contained 4 drawers. Each drawer contained between 80 and 200 individual documents, letters, memoranda, reports, photographs, and carbon copies of communications bearing official stamps from multiple Reich government agencies. The total document count, completed over the following 3 weeks of cataloging, approximately 7,800 individual items. The documents spanned the period from January 1944 to April 1945, the final 16 months of the Third Reich. The Russian labels on the cabinet drawers, applied by Soviet intelligence officers who had first accessed the room in May 1945, organized the documents into categories. Translated from Russian, the drawer labels read: Cabinet 1, Chancellery /Chirtatnyselsprests. Internal Communications Cabinet, 2 Chancellery Sastens. The External Communications Cabinet, 3 Altieri Sa Military Stat Eastern Front Reports. Cabinet 4 Stats Wead Military na Wide Western Front Reports Cabinet. 5 is Personnel SAS Senior Officials Cabinet. 6 Personnel SAS Transfers and Movements Cabinet. 7 Ostient Financial Reich Treasury. Cabinet 8 Financial Sart. External Accounts Cabinet. 9 One Intelligence Wine Foreign Cabinet. 10 Side Intelligence Mabi Domestic. Cabinet 11 Special Projects. Cabinet 12 like unclassified. Miscellaneous cabinets. 1 through 10 contained material that was historically significant but not revolutionary. Internal chancellery memos confirming known policy decisions. Military situation reports that corroborated existing accounts of the Eastern and Western Front collapses. Personnel records that filled gaps in the known movements of senior Nazi officials during the final months. Important material, valuable to historians, but not the kind of material that would cause the Soviets to seal a room with a double concrete wall. That material was in Cabinet 11, Special Projects. If you want to know what was inside Cabinet 11 and why the Soviets buried it under Vossstrasse for 75 years, subscribe now so you don't miss what the documents revealed. Cabinet 11 contained 342 documents. Unlike the other cabinets, which held a mixture of original German documents and Soviet applied Russian labels, Cabinet 11 contained documents that had been annotated extensively in Russian. Soviet intelligence officers had not merely cataloged these documents, they had studied them, translated sections into Russian, cross referenced them with other materials, written analytical notes in the margins, and then they had sealed them under Vossstrasse instead of shipping them to Moscow. This is extraordinary. Soviet intelligence practice in occupied Berlin was systematic: locate documents, catalog them, crate them, and ship them to Moscow for analysis by the relevant directorate. Military intelligence to GRU, political intelligence to NKVD, scientific intelligence to the appropriate ministry. Cabinet 11's documents were cataloged but never shipped. They were studied on site and then entombed. The 342 documents in Cabinet 11 fall into three categories. Each category contradicts a specific element of the accepted historical narrative of the Third Reich's collapse. Contradiction 1. The bunker timeline. The accepted history of the Führer bunker's final days is well established. Hitler retreated to the bunker in January 1945. The inner circle, Goebbels, Bormann, Krebs, Bergdorf, and others, joined him. Eva Braun arrived. The military situation deteriorated. Hitler married Braun on April 29th. He dictated his political testament. On April 30th, he and Braun committed suicide. Their bodies were burned in the Chancellery Garden. Goebbels and his wife killed their 6 children and then themselves on May 1st. The remaining bunker personnel surrendered or attempted to escape on May 1st and 2nd. This timeline is supported by the testimony of bunker survivors: Traudl Jungi, Rokus Misch, Artur Axmann, and others. It's the accepted account. Cabinet 11 contains a series of internal communications dated April the 28th and 29th, 1945, that suggest the timeline may be incomplete. Specifically, 4 memoranda bear the stamp of the Führer Bunker Communications Office and are dated April 28th. They reference a meeting held in the bunker on the evening of April 27th that does not appear in any survivor's account. The memoranda do not describe the meeting's content directly. They reference decisions made during the meeting using coded language consistent with the Chancellery's internal communication protocols. One memorandum, addressed to an unnamed recipient designated only by a code number, states, per the decision of April 27th, the materials designated under Sonderaktion-IV are to be transferred to the secondary location by 0600, April 28th. Confirm receipt upon completion. No written confirmation to be retained at this location. Sonderaktion-IV. Special Action 4. The term Sonderaktion was used by the Nazi bureaucracy for a range of classified operations, most notoriously the Sonderaktion 1005 program for the destruction of evidence of the Holocaust. But Sonderaktion-IV does not correspond to any known classified program in existing records. The memorandum orders materials transferred to a secondary location and explicitly instructs that no written confirmation be retained, meaning the paper trail was designed to dead end at this document. 3 additional memoranda from the same date reference Sonderaktion-IV. None describe the materials being transferred. None identify the secondary location. None identify the recipient. Soviet intelligence analysts annotated these documents heavily. Their marginal notes, translated from Russian, include cross-reference with captured Bormann files, no match found. Secondary location, investigate Thuringia, Berchtesgaden, and Baltic routes. Materials unidentified, possibly research-related, possibly financial. Requires further investigation. The Soviet analysts could not determine what Sonderaktion-IV was. They could not find the secondary location. They could not identify the materials. And they sealed these documents under Vossstrasse rather than send them to Moscow for further analysis. Contradiction 2. The personnel count. The accepted history of the Führer bunker identifies approximately 50 to 65 people present during the final days. Military officers, secretaries, guards, medical personnel, and support staff. Their names are known. Their testimony has been recorded. Cabinet 11 contains a document that the Soviet analysts labeled Bunker Personnel Manifest, Final, dated April 25th, 1945. The document lists 83 names. 83. Approximately 20 more people than the accepted history accounts for. Cross-referencing the 83 names against known bunker personnel produces 61 matches. These are the people whose presence in the bunker is documented through survivor testimony and existing records. The remaining 22 names do not appear in any published account of the Führer bunker's final days. Of these 22 names, German historians who have examined the documents have identified 14 as mid-ranking officials from various Reich ministries, men whose names appear in pre-war bureaucratic records, but who disappear from the historical record after 1944. 8 names could not be identified at all. They do not appear in any known German military, civilian, or government record. Their rank designations do not correspond to standard Wehrmacht, SS, or civil service classifications. 8 people in the Führer bunker during the final days whose identities cannot be established and whose organizational affiliation cannot be determined. Who were they? The Soviet analysts wrote in the margin of this document a single word in Russian: Specialisty. Specialists. Specialists in what? Contradiction 3. The missing crate. The wooden crate found on the floor of the sealed room beneath Vossstrasse contained not documents but physical objects. Inside the crate, packed in straw and wrapped in oilcloth, the archaeological team found 14 glass photographic plates, each approximately 20 centimeters by 25 centimeters, a leather-bound journal, handwritten in German, 187 pages, a metal canister containing a reel of 16 millimeter film, approximately 200 feet, 3 sealed glass vials containing an unidentified crystalline substance, a folded map of a location that does not correspond to any known site in Germany, occupied Europe, or the Soviet Union. The glass photographic plates were examined under controlled conditions at the German Historical Museum. They depict an underground facility, not a bunker in the Berlin sense, but a large-scale excavation carved from rock containing equipment that the examining historians could not identify. The photographs show large cylindrical devices arranged in rows. The devices do not resemble any known German weapon system, industrial equipment, or scientific apparatus documented in captured German records. The walls of the facility shown in the photographs bear markings, not text, but geometric patterns carved or painted onto the rock surface. The patterns do not correspond to any known German military symbology, runic system, or scientific notation. The leather-bound journal is written in German, but uses technical terminology that historians have not been able to fully translate. Several terms appear to be neologisms, words invented by the author that do not exist in standard German or in the specialized vocabularies of German science, engineering, or military usage. The 16 millimeter film has not been publicly screened. It was transferred to the Bundesarchiv, the German Federal Archives, for preservation and analysis. The Bundesarchiv has confirmed the film's existence but has not released its contents. A spokesperson stated in 2022 that the film is undergoing preservation and contextual analysis, and that release is not currently scheduled. The 3 glass vials were transferred to a laboratory at the Technical University of Berlin for chemical analysis. The results of this analysis have not been published. The map depicts a mountainous region with annotations in German. The annotations reference coordinates, but the coordinate system used does not match standard German military grid references, standard geographic coordinates, or any known proprietary coordinate system used by German military or scientific organizations during World War II. The location on the map has not been identified. The Soviet officer's cap on the table provides the final piece of context. Soviet military caps were issued with serial numbers stamped into the leather headband. The cap found in the sealed room bore serial number KK 447-11945, which Soviet military records, now accessible through the Russian State Military Archive in Moscow, assigned to Major Pyotr Ivanovich Kovalenko. Kovalenko served in the SMERSH Counterintelligence Directorate, the Soviet military's internal security and espionage organization, responsible for hunting spies, traitors, and Nazi war criminals. His personnel file shows he was assigned to the Berlin Special Operations Group in May 1945, tasked with securing and cataloging captured German government documents. His file shows normal duty reports through June 1945, then an abrupt notation dated July 3rd, 1945. Major Kovalenko reassigned to Directorate S, effective immediately. All previous duty records sealed by order of Deputy Director Abakumov. Directorate S was the SMERSH section responsible for the most sensitive captured materials, documents and evidence relating to German weapons programs, intelligence networks, and scientific research that the Soviet leadership wanted, kept from the Western Allies. Kovalenko's file after July 3rd, 1945 is empty. No further duty assignments, no discharge record, no death record, no pension record. Major Pyotr Ivanovich Kovalenko disappears from the Soviet military record system on July 3rd, 1945, 3 days after what appears to be his final visit to the sealed room beneath Vossstrasse, the room where he left his cap on the table and walked away. He was never seen again, or rather, there is no record that he was ever seen again. The distinction matters because the absence of a record in Soviet military archives doesn't necessarily mean the person ceased to exist. It means their records were sealed, moved, or destroyed at a classification level above what has been declassified. Kovalenko found something in that room. He cataloged it. He annotated it. He reported it to his superiors. And then he and his records vanished into a directorate that handled the Soviet Union's most closely guarded secrets. The room was sealed. The documents were buried. Kovalenko was erased. For 75 years, the room waited. The 2020 discovery beneath Vossstrasse produced 7,800 documents, 14 photographic plates, a journal, a film reel, 3 chemical samples, and a map to a location no one has identified. Of these materials, approximately 6,400 documents have been cataloged and made available to researchers through the German Historical Museum and the Bundesarchiv. Approximately 400 documents, primarily those from Cabinet 11, remain under restricted access. The restriction was imposed not by the German government, but by the terms of a bilateral agreement between Germany and Russia governing the handling of Soviet-era materials found on German soil. The film has not been released. The chemical analysis of the vials has not been published. The map's location has not been identified, or if it has, the identification has not been made public. The journal has been partially translated. The translated portions describe, in technical language, a facility and a project that do not correspond to any known German wartime program. The journal's author identifies himself only by a code designation, Leiter IV, Leiter IV, the same designation as Sonderaktion-IV. The author of the journal was the director of Special Action IV. He described his project in 187 handwritten pages, and those pages were sealed in a crate, placed in a room beneath the chancellery, and entombed behind a double concrete wall while the Soviet army fought through the streets above. Someone decided in the final hours of the Third Reich that this journal was more important than escape. Someone chose to preserve these records rather than flee. That person, or persons, may have been among the 22 unidentified names on the Bunker Personnel Manifest. The Specialists. The Complete Record Discovery. Date, March 14th, 2020. Location, Vossstrasse, Berlin Mitte, 4.2 meters below modern street level. Discovered by Jürgen Hartmann, construction foreman, Bürger Baugruppe. Room dimensions, 4 meters by 6 meters by 2.2 meters. Construction. Double concrete wall with 15 centimeter air gap. Sealed since approximately May to July 1945. Contents 12 steel filing cabinets containing approximately 7,800 documents, 1 wooden military crate containing photographic plates, journal, film reel, chemical vials, and Map 1 Soviet military officer's cap, serial number KK-4471-19, 45 documents. Date range, January 1944 to April 1945. Languages, German original, Russian annotations. Classification, Soviet intelligence annotations present on approximately 1,400 documents. Documents publicly accessible. Approximately 6,400 documents under restricted access. Approximately 1,400 key findings. 4 memoranda referencing Sonderaktion-IV, a classified program not documented in any other known source. A personnel manifest listing 83 people in the Führer bunker, 22 more than the accepted historical account, 8 individuals on the manifest who cannot be identified in any German record. Photographic plates depicting an unidentified underground facility with unidentified equipment, a 187-page journal by the director of Sonderaktion-IV, partially translated, describing a project with no known counterpart A map to an unidentified location using an unrecognized coordinate system, 16mm film, contents unreleased chemical samples, analysis unpublished Soviet intelligence officer, Major Pyotr Ivanovich Kovalenko, SMERSH. Last documented activity, July 3rd, 1945. Reassigned to Directorate. As no subsequent records exist. Current status. Room excavated and documented, July to August 2020. Documents transferred to German Historical Museum and Bundesarchiv. Film and chemical samples under Institutional Custody Journal, under ongoing translation and analysis. Bilateral Germany-Russia agreement restricts access to Soviet annotated materials. No public release date announced for restricted materials under Vossstrasse. The room beneath Vossstrasse has been emptied. Its contents are in archives, laboratories, and restricted collections. The construction project that uncovered it has resumed. Within a year, a residential building will stand above the spot where 7,800 documents waited in darkness for 75 years. The building's future residents will park their cars and ride their elevators and live their lives approximately 4 meters above the place where someone sealed the final secrets of the Third Reich behind a double concrete wall while the world above burned. They will not know what was beneath them. Most of them will never learn. The documents from cabinets 1 through 10 will be studied by historians for decades. They will fill gaps. They will confirm details. They will add texture to a history that already has more texture than most people can absorb. The documents from Cabinet 11 will remain restricted. The film will remain unscreened. The vials will remain unanalyzed, publicly at least. The map will remain unidentified, officially at least. And the journal of Leiter IV, 187 pages describing a project that no other record mentions, written by a person no other document names, sealed in a crate by someone who chose preservation over survival. That journal sits in the Bundesarchiv in Koblenz, partially translated, partially understood, partially available, waiting. Major Kovalenko found it in 1945. He studied it, he annotated it, he reported it, and then he disappeared. His cap is now in a museum, his records are sealed, his fate is unknown, but he left something behind in that room, beneath Vossstrasse. Not just the documents, not just the cap. He left the room itself, sealed with a double wall, designed to last. He wanted someone to find it. He just didn't want them to find it too soon. 75 years. That's how long the room waited. Whether that was long enough, whether the world is ready for what Leiter IV described in those 187 pages, is a question the Bundesarchiv has not yet answered. Or perhaps they are still reading. Perhaps they have read it and do not know what to do with what they found, or perhaps they know exactly what to do. And they have decided, like the Soviets before them, that some rooms are better left sealed.